Welcome to the Kanban Coaching Exchange, everybody, on this fine May evening. The good news is it has stopped thundering and lightning in the UK, so we have got the designated 5-minute sun outside of my window. So we're very honoured tonight to have Tomo Lennox joining us all the way from the US and Minneapolis, and he did actually send me snow photos one day to prove how much snow was outside in his garden.
Finally melted.
So Tomo reached out to me as an avid member of the Kanban Coaching Exchange. Also, we've got connections in place because Tomo is an accredited Kanban trainer, and he's also one of the few people to have attended one of the very first conferences that was Kanban back in the day, back in 2009. And he's got a little slide about himself where you can see a super rich history. So I'll let Tomo introduce himself in full. But give us a warm case welcome to Tomo, our speaker tonight. Over to you, Tomo.
Thank you so much. Let's share something. You can look at this. Okay, everybody got that? Let's see. Okay, so here's our agenda. And first, a little bit about me. We'll fly through this. This is me at work, and this is me as the alter ego. I don't do that often, but I actually do that occasionally. It shakes people up a little bit. I've been around for a long, long time. I started in mainframes, in BASIC, and went through all that stuff with hardware, and then waterfall, and finally discovered Kanban, and got certified. And looking into the future, I'm hoping to finish my book, which this is a little bit of a piece of. I got certified in everything. Fun. I've been searching for a better way to do things. Back in the old days, I used to think waterfall was great. It's so much more formal. And then I realized it doesn't work. And then I did the early agile bits, and some things worked and other things didn't work. And then I started to discover lean and lean software development and Kanban. And it's like, oh, this is good, but the details are really important. So I'm looking for little bits that work, and I'm hoping to share a few of them with you today. But first, I love this quote. It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. It's been attributed to Will Rogers and Mark Twain, but history shows that actually Josh Billings and Artemis Ward said it first. There are so many things that people do because they're agile, and then I say, well, how do you know that's agile? Where is it written? Is it in the Agile Manifesto, the Scrum Guide, the Kanban Blue Book? And no, that's just the way you do things. Those are the things we have to work on. If we actually tested all our assumptions and only did the ones that worked, we'd be in a much better place. But that's not the way people work, right? We just do stuff unless it really hurts. So first on stand-ups, and like I said, any questions anytime. As long as we can keep up with it, I would be delighted to take questions. So for this section, we're going to talk about these things. Let's fly right along. The first one, the zombie stand-up. I think the Scrum people gave us this one, and the Kanban people are largely smart enough not to do it, but I see it all over the place. The Scrum Master just goes around and each person says, John, what's your status update? Yesterday I worked on STO. Today I work on STO. There are no blockers. And then they go off for 5 minutes to talk about their dentist appointment and their trainings and all their future. And then they go to the next person and they do the same thing. The next person goes the same thing. And you get to the end of the stand-up, you think, are we on schedule? Are there any issues? Should we be shuffling things? And you have no idea. So don't do the zombie stand-up where you go person to person. The 3 questions format never seemed to work well. It used to be in the Scrum Guide, but it isn't anymore. And it's not based on anything you can find in any of your book right now. So don't do that. This is an archaic technique. And I think most of you know what you need is the walk the board stand-up, which kind of comes with Kanban, where there's a facilitator, but it may not be the same one all the time. And he says, Alex, what does it take to move this card? Right? That's the real question. What does it take to move this card to the right? And Alex says, I just barely got started, and there was an error that I had to go stop work on, and so now I'm stuck in this card. And Vidya says, oh, I'm going to have mine checked in soon. I'll take the card, but I don't see any reviewers. And Ramek says, oh, I'll volunteer. And May says, I'll volunteer. And Raj says, I've already started the test cases, right? This is a team coordinating on a story. This is a team figuring out how to get the work done, right? This is the kind of stand-up you want. Any questions on that one? Anybody still doing the old 3-question stand-up? Anybody like that one better? Okay, so now we're going to walk the board. How many columns are going to be on this board? If you just have 3 columns on your board, like to do, doing, done, that's just a to-do list. That's not a board. That's just a list to me. You really want enough columns that you can see things flow across, and you can figure out where things are stuck and how to shuffle things around to get them done. So you really want a nice wide board. Often there's a left side of the board where you kind of refine and invent things, a middle of the board where the team does their daily stand-up, and a left side of the board that's got all those DevOps-y, regression, test, release-y things on it. I've seen some teams like to see the full board, gives you the big picture. Other teams are distracted and I end up separating the board into 3 pieces. So here's a board I like. This is Jira with Advanced Agile Boards, a plugin that I'm really quite fond of. So I've got the columns across the top, right? I've got some collapsed over here on the left, but I've got a discovery column where I can work on prototypes or do research. I've got a refined column where the work is refined and ready to go. I can pull things into this ready to pull, so we have a little bit of idea of this is coming, this is right now. And then my development columns, my in progress, they put a block put in. I'm not fond of that, but the team asked for it. One where they review it, and then they push it off to SQA. There's a handoff column where you make sure there's a nice handoff. An SQA column where they test it. And in this case, if the team had a problem where when SQA had a problem, they would push it back into progress and it would get lost. So they asked me for a new column called defects. So SQA pushes it back to the defects if there's a problem, and then the team can pull it in because they know it's high priority and get it through again. So I'm not saying this is the ideal columns. I bet you could do better than this, but these are reasonable columns. And let me argue that this is a nice number of columns so I can watch the flow of things across the board and see when things are building up, and look at when things are backing up. I can put WIP limits on it. It's a nice board.
Sorry,
yeah.
Can I ask a question? So do you think there's a fundamental difference between what you said, SOA can push it into defects, and the team potentially SOA blocking it and then the team pulling it, so that you have a continuous pull-based system rather than pushing stuff?
Yes.
Is there a difference between the two, or is it just semantics?
This is a hybrid, I think. It's really wonderful when you have boards where all the columns go in neat sequences and nothing goes backwards. In Daniel Visconti's school of Kanban, he's got a whole branch of it. He does not like going backwards. To him, it's still in SQA and the developers are working it there. But my teams have objected to that, and I try to follow them where I can. So this is a system where the put here is to a ready column. So if I'm a developer and I've got my story done, I can reach over here and grab a defect if there is one, or I can reach over here and get something I'm ready to pull. Of course, there isn't any there. That's interesting. So I've got a decent pull system, and this push is back into a loop. So I'm not actually pushing anything into an in progress column. I still pull everything. The SQA is pulling from their handoff column, and the development is pulling off of either their ready or their defects column. So I've still got good pull. And you could reasonably say, why is SQA and development different? Shouldn't they be the same? Probably. This is a team of medium maturity.
Okay, so one difference I think is if you left it in SQA with a blocker, then they could literally say it's further to the right on the board, and so potentially has a high priority. Whereas if you push it left, they may not be aware that you pushed it left. They continue working on lower priorities, and so you're not effervescing the highest priority to the team broadly as
So
a meeting.
that was specifically the request for this, that this defect column is that special high priority column that says that at least you should do these before you pull anything over here, and maybe you should drop everything and work on this one now instead of finishing these. And it lights up here. I could even put a whip limit on it of 1 or something, and then every time there's something there, it says ding 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 ding, go focus here. So I think the board has the right mechanisms to communicate that priority.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Any other questions on that part of it? This board supports something that most of the tools I've ever worked on, Rally and TFS have had, but Jira doesn't. You want to know what the process is. You want explicit processes. And so in this one, I can hover over the name of a column, and my explicit policy can be over each column. I really like that. Sometimes it's exit conditions, sometimes it's a description. In this case, I just hover over, hit the pencil, write it in. We can edit it on any review, even in a stand-up. We say, shouldn't this be higher priority than this? Shouldn't you do the unit test first? So that's a characteristic I love in a board and you should look for. I've got whip limits, and in this add-on, I can put whip limits on each column. I can put whip limits on groups of columns. And since I made this slide, the team had a retrospective, and they said, when it goes to SQA and SQA backs up with things, that's not right. You shouldn't be pulling more things. And so I just extended this column all the way over QA now. So there's one whip limit that's the in progress and broad stuff that involves all of these. This one also allows me to set whip limits by swim lanes, by groups of swim lanes, by individual people. There's all kinds of ways I can set whip limits. And I didn't realize how important it is, but I'm really enjoying it. It allows me to show dependencies. This card is dependent on this one. That's been really handy. It's distracting. I often turn it off, but you like to be able to look at it now and then. Oops, I did that wrong. What I meant is you can put more people's name in a card. A lot of tools only let you put one name in a card. Mine. It's my card. And really, what you want to say is this is a little project that this developer and this architect and this SME and this tester are working on together, and put all their names on it. And then when you're in your stand-up, you don't just have to go to the developer. The whole team can be more involved with it. And if it gets pushed back or something, there's no question who was on it. So I really like having this list of names here. And as I said before, I can show dependencies, which is sometimes really important when you pull work. I can use both the whip limits, a light up red when it says there's too much here, but I can also use the minimums. So I've got these columns set for minimums. It says, if you're doing good flow, you should never let these columns get below a certain level because you'll have nothing to pull one day. And so they light up and tell you, spend some time in refinement, drop your development, spend some time in refinement, otherwise you're not going to be ready. So by lighting up the colors on the board is automatically telling us, some really important things of what to do and making life kind of simple. Okay, next tip. When I start with a team, I often come in as a Scrum Master coach, and I lead a couple stand-ups, maybe a couple weeks worth. But that makes me the boss, and them the workers, and that is not a good psychology. So after a little bit, I take the strongest person in the team. I said, Monday, you got the board. It takes them a couple times I get through it, and then I pick the next person and I rotate. So everybody in the team gets a chance. When the team does the facilitation, they lead the team. They're not followers, and it changes the whole psychology. So I strongly recommend rotating the board you walk. And sometimes I even expand it all the way out. So if there's people who hang out in the meeting now and then who aren't strictly team, project managers, BAs, SMEs, whatever, I make them team too. I say, your turn to facilitate. And it really makes them part of the team. It's a really great thing. In some of my teams, there really is somebody who's got all the answers, who's got all the wisdom, and they do it mostly, but we always make a mechanism like, share the board Fridays or whatever, so that everybody gets a chance. We discovered this wheel. It's online, wheelofnames.com. Sometimes you start a meeting and you say, who wants to do the board today? Crickets. No one says a thing. And then, you pick someone. This makes it just so fair. Just at the end of the meeting, you click the wheel, it spins around with all the names on it, it picks someone. Tomorrow it's your board. Takes all the pressure off of it. It's been kind of fun. Let's see. When you're doing walk the board, one of the things that's really good is to make cards that are easy to walk. So when you get those people who don't walk the board often, they're new members, they're a little bit shy, they have everything they need. So you certainly want the name of the person who's working on the card right now. Ideally, like that whole team. So if that person is there, you have somebody else to ask. And you want that process, as I said, at the top of column, so I can go back and look at what the process is, and that makes it really easy for those part-time facilitators. And then I want to suggest that in the old stand-ups I was in, they were one at a time. There was the Scrum Master who was poking at people one at a time, and there was the person who had to expound on the status of the story, and everybody else sat there and waited their turn. Or worse yet, sat there trying to figure out what they were going to say when it was their turn and not listen to anybody else. And I like to foster some kind of idea that everybody on the team is working together. Everybody's got a role. And I reduced it down. There's some more slides on this that I'm not going to show today, but this is for the team members. When you're sitting there looking at the board, you should be able to answer these questions. They came from a game called Ask Kanban, if you've ever seen that one, but it's a derivative of that. And so, are there any active work that isn't on the board? Is somebody doing something because the vice president asked them to? It's not on the board. Are there fields missing, like what release this is going to be in? Are there cards that are sitting there long enough that do you think someone might need help? Is there a different way we can organize the cards to get things done faster? Right? Are people working on cards on the left side of the board when there's stuff on the right side they should be working on? Did someone pull a low priority card when there's high priority stuff? Is there some way we can adjust the priorities and assignments to get things done faster? And has anybody got too many cards? You can have the board enforce some of this, but in general, I try to teach all the team members to look for this and bring it up. And then whenever they do, I give them lots and lots of kudos and personal credit for noticing this. But I want everybody to be looking for this. I want the team to lead the team, not the Scrum Master or coach to lead the team. And then last in this one, you have those retros. We'll talk about retros in just a minute. And often they start with kind of a blank slate. Oh, what do you want to talk about? Or what went well, what didn't go well? All of the issues come up in the stand-up. And so during the stand-up, you should be looking for things to talk about during the retro. And you need some kind of a document, a place where you record them, where every time something kind of funny happens, you put it on the list. A column backs up and you juggle it and you get things back up again. Someone is out and then you can't find them and something gets delayed. For the fourth time, one of the customers gave you a specification missing the most critical thing. Whenever you get one of those little things during a stand-up, have a place to put it down. And when you start the retros with those things, it goes so smoothly. Okay. So that was the stand-up part of it. Any questions on the stand-up part? All clean?
So if you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat channel, anything like that. I've got one just to buy a bit of time for everyone to put their conversation in. You use the word stand up a lot there, Tomo,
Yeah.
but I've been sort of party to a lot of conversations where people don't actually like the word stand up because it's not very inclusive, especially because we don't really stand up and sometimes people can't actually stand up. And so it can be a little bit like, oh. So what do you think about this movement to try and eradicate stand up from our kind of like lingo in the agile world?
So I love the sensitivity issue of it. But I use that word because the Scrum people call it the daily Scrum. And although that's a fine term, it doesn't work very well for a Kanban team. And the Kanban people have a couple different names for these huddles or whatever. And I just wanted an across the board term, so I used that old fashioned one. But if there were a new term, that would make sense. Love that. That you're certainly right. Nobody stands up anymore. I know why they did it once upon a time, but the first thing I did the first time I was Scrum Master is say, everybody sit down and get close to the speakerphone here because there's people who can't hear you.
Okay. And there's a question from the chat channel from Waldemar. How long max is a daily stand up in your words? And do you have a meeting afterwards?
Yeah, so I do almost everywhere. I kind of like the Scrum guidelines on 15 minutes is about right. That feels about right to me. And there are teams, especially fully distributed teams, where they have them a little bit more, and that's fine. But I like that kind of 15-minute guideline. And almost all my teams schedule half an hour, um, and then after that, it's open for anybody who needs the time to collaborate.
Okay, so you kind of like have the dedicated synchronizing time, and then you have a little bit of time afterwards if people need to debrief and have some more of those kind of like problem solving conversations underneath.
That's right. And with distributed teams, a significant amount of work is done, over the communication channel. And while you're all there, it's a really good time to gather a couple people together and, huddle on some issues. So almost everybody does that, and that works really well. And if you don't, you get some time back.
And there's a question also from Waldemar in the chat about, is your stand-ups every day? Because certainly at the Kanban University, we talk about your daily Kanbans and we also talk about your weekly Kanbans. So what are your views on this?
So I always coach to every day, but a number of my teams have switched to 3 days a week. And sometimes it falls on its face and we go back, and sometimes it works and then it's okay. So I would let the teams try anything they want, and then try to be analytical about whether it's working or not and give them feedback. But in general, if a team wants to do something, I want to let them. Sometimes I give them some counter advice, but the team really should be in charge of the team. It really makes the right psychology. And, and then this is the stand up, and of course, and then there's other meetings, the Kanban cadences. And so, those may have a wider cadence, but the stand up feels right for me at one a day.
We've got a question from Bruno. So on virtual stands ups, they like to start with icebreakers, a quick little game. So, how often do you think they should really do that? And does it negatively impact on any way on productivity or any other aspects?
I always like one in the retrospectives, and I usually don't put them in the stand ups. But once I worked with the team as a coach, and they had a pretty strong scrum master, and he did four truths and a lie, three truths and a lie, four truths and a lie there. Before every stand up, you pick one person on the team, and they would do it. The next day, the next person was in, and it only took 4 minutes at the beginning of a team, and that was the most fun stand up I've ever been to. I did not want to miss that stand up because he was keeping score of how many people guessed right. And I always wanted to get back there. So the concept can really, really work if you can do it kind of efficiently and doesn't take much time. It really does good team building. I thought that was brilliant.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions. Is there any more questions from the group or anything like that?
Okay, we'll move on to the next section then. Here's with retrospectives. We talked about those icebreakers already. So when should you have a retrospective? In Scrum, they make it really clear. There's a sprint, you have one, once a sprint. For Kanban teams, you can put them anywhere you want. But if you don't have them often enough, you don't get enough feedback. Kanban teams are notorious for stretching them out for way too long. So one nice solution is just put them on a clock, just like your Scrum team. Right, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, on the 1st and 15th of every month, what it is. You have them, and then you keep them regular enough. I've seen that work. Sometimes when you have a retrospective on the clock, it's not a retrospective on anything in particular. It's a retrospective on time. And so you start the retro and you say, hey, how was that last 3 weeks? Yeah, okay, good. What you'd love to say was, okay, the release is out the door. Let's have a retro. Or, woof, we got that disaster cleaned up. The main server's back online. Or, we've added 2 people. Let's re-huddle and let's have a retro. If you can attach them to something, they feel a lot more valuable. And even if you're a Scrum team, a sprint is just barely in anything for most teams. Some teams have sprints really mean something, but most teams don't even have a sprint goal. So even on Scrum teams, it's great to be able to align them with something. So if you can find something to align them so you get, 2 a month or so, great. Otherwise, when you get below that 2 a month point, you should probably say, hey, it's time for a retro. Let's see, for any of you who have read the Kanban maturity model, you know that there's several levels of this thing that starts as a retro. So for your maturity level 0 on the Kanban maturity model, your team doesn't even have retros. They're just a clump of people. Then they get up to level 1, they're a team and they have retros. So we'll talk through it on level 1 and then talk about the next 2 levels. So you try to find a day when the whole team can make it. If that's not possible, try to find a way so at least there's some rotation so we're not missing the same people all the time. And I like to invite anyone who regularly attends stand-ups. Some people are kind of strict. They want it just to be just the team and nobody else. But if anybody is invested enough to hang out in the stand-ups every day because they're an SME or the PM or something like that, I say bring them in. I've had very little bad luck with too many people in the stand-up if they're regular attendees. But there is an exception. Sometimes your executives will be really interested in this Kanban thing or this Agile thing or this hot team or whatever it is, and they'll say, can I come too? And sometimes a really nice person up in the executive committee, who everybody loves, Uncle Ben who runs the company over here says, can I come? And as soon as he joins, nobody says a word. I've seen this over and over again, and I wish it weren't true, and I wish there were this thing you could say that says, don't worry about Uncle Ben here, just speak. But whenever you get somebody who's too high a level above the rest of them, people don't seem to speak. So even if they're nice, well-behaved people, you probably can't have somebody too high in your retro. Anybody have a different feeling in that one? Anybody have the vice president of the meeting, everything goes well?
So I would say that that's a symptom of another problem.
Which is?
Psychological safety.
Yes.
So if the team can understand and is encouraged to feel safe in expressing themselves, they'll find that they can tackle things more readily. Sometimes that's about educating the team, but often it's about educating the senior manager that comes in to make them feel like it's a psychologically safe environment as well.
Yes, excellent point. And I think that should be possible. I have not personally pulled it off yet, but it feels like that should work. So yes, bring up psychological safety. If people are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs, get into a bad relationship with their boss, not get a bonus, if that's what they're thinking, you're not going to get any discussion out of them. They're not even going to vote anonymously. They're not even going to get to the meeting at all if they can help it. They'll all flee and go somewhere else. So you can't have any environment where people are really scared that they're going to be criticized or ripped apart. And you have to solve that problem first. And it's really messy, but you really don't even want to have a retro if people don't feel safe. And to sidetrack just a minute, that big study at Google, the Project Aristotle. It's Project Aristotle. They organized a bunch of teams and found some teams work a lot better than others. And they thought the right mix of people will get us a really hot team. And they tried all kinds of mix of people, and they were all kind of the same. It didn't seem to matter how they organized them. So they tried something else that didn't work. So they just studied what makes a team really good. And at the bottom of the study, the number one item came up: psychological safety. The teams which felt the safest, they did the experiments, and they weren't afraid to fail, and they discovered new things, and they went on. That was number one. There were 4 more, but psychological safety was the number one issue that made a team high performance. So you
Could I just raise another quick point?
Yeah.
So we talked a little earlier about not using the word stand up because it's not inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that that might be necessary for psychological safety. But even raising that as a topic may make people feel like, oh, I've always got to be careful about anything I say, and may discourage people from talking. So being inclusive might be unintentionally psychologically unsafe as well.
You'd have to be done gracefully. I've worked at a place where we called it the daily, and that wasn't bad. Daily, we didn't have to talk about it then, just say daily.
So yeah, I think the point was just be careful what problem you're trying to solve, because sometimes there's unintended consequences.
One leads to another. Yeah. So I don't provide any solutions or how to provide psychological safety, but you've got to do it. Otherwise, this whole retro thing is useless. And then we talked about the icebreaker. There's this weird thing where when you just put a microphone in front of somebody, they don't talk. They've got to be part of a conversation, then they talk. So you've got a chicken and egg problem here. They won't talk until they talk. So how are you going to get them talking? And the solution is talk about something easy, talk about something fun. And once they've done that, now they're talking and they can talk about other things. And especially if you can get them laughing, if you can get people laughing, you can get people talking. It's a really useful way to get people in the right frame of mind. And I have done all kinds of things to try to do this. I did interactive jigsaw puzzles. That was fun. I've done cat videos. I've done who's got the pet thing. The more creative, the more fun things you could do. Star Wars trivia is really handy with programmers. Almost all programmers love Star Wars, and the Star Wars trivia contest is good. Anything fun you can do, but of course, if it's fun a couple times, then it wears out, and you have to keep thinking of new ones. So, as the leader of the group, as the coach, as the scrum master, whatever your role is, providing a list of fun things to try is really important. The last one I did was a scavenger hunt. I started people with an easy one: find a pen, hold it to your nose. And I got people to do that, and then it was find tape. Well, most people could find tape, and then we got to more and more obscure things. Find a book with over 500 pages. People were laughing and running around, and by the time we got to the retro, just minutes later, it went much smoother. You want to do something interactive. You don't want people to be able to sit and watch. You want them to participate. And here it's you got to find the right tools. I often use fun retrospectives or idea boards, but there's other ones that are maybe better. But you want people to click on things. You want people to say, throw the cards on the board and group them by this, or prioritize them by this, or put on the name of the category this is. If people are clicking and moving and conflicting and talking about it, you've got the kind of retro where people are thinking. You really need to be able to think about. You get people thinking and interacting. So find something with some buttons, some votes, some clicks, some slide arounds. A lot of people use the mural or mural boards. That works really well. But find some way to get people to interact. Change format. A lot of teams I work with have one format. And often it's that tired old 3-column spreadsheet. What went well, what didn't go well, what should we do next? If you keep asking people the same questions, they keep giving you the same answers. So you want different formats. Some of them just get worn out, but you want to have a whole bunch of them. I say every Scrum Master should have a half a dozen different formats they can pull out instantly so I can match them to the right situation. You want to come ready that if the team is kind of edgy with each other, we do a more touchy-feely one. If the numbers aren't good, we look at numbers. Process different formats. Here's a few possible ones I've tried. Dive into the metrics. Bring a bunch of the metrics and just talk about why is this so low, why is this so high, why does this one go down at the end of the year. Just talk about it. You learn things. I love one where we just we go around the room and I tell everybody before the retro, bring your favorite and your least favorite story to the retro, and then we talk about it. And people will say their favorite story is it, and all the data was on the story right away, and I just pulled it out and I got it done in no time. And so, okay, so having the data not there it can be a problem, but if you have it, it's good. And once you hear people say it a couple times, ding, you've got a topic to talk about. You can discuss the team member interactions, upstream problems where they keep getting the same hang-ups, roadblocks or whatever, because things keep not being specified, keep being redone, the customer changes their mind, whatever they are. Talk about that. Talk about downstream partners, especially if they're there, or everything's running pretty well. Let's stand back and be strategic. Like, what would it take to really crank this up? What if we wanted 10% more throughput out of the team? What would we have to do? I said, have a bunch of formats all ready, and then for each stand up, figure out which one to use to get the team to the place it needs to. And you should have an action plan. Not too many changes at once, but at least one. Sometimes people go through those boards and end up with 8 things to do, and no one will ever do 8 things. But if you've got 1 or 2 kind of hot things, you can focus on those. And they can't be too ambitious. You can't say, oh, we need a new building. Why doesn't the company buy us a new building? That'll solve all our problems. And you can't say, here's how we can save 10 cents on coffee, right? It's got to be worth doing. And you have to find a place to put your plans. You have to either say, all our outputs are going to be a story or a process change, right? And otherwise, they're just lost. Sometimes people have a page where they keep things, but in general, you want a place where the stories go at the end of it. And for me, a story on the board or a change to the process are the preferred outputs, and occasionally it's something else. Okay, so now we're Kanban here. The retro is just kind of the level 1 Kanban version of a Scrum retrospective. For a more mature team, we can take her up a level, and we can make it a flow review. So, to my mind, and maybe some people know this better than I do, a flow review and a retro are kind of similar in a lot of ways. But you dig in deeper for a flow review. You really want to look at, what's going on, how can we improve the flow, where it's kind of a natural side effect of a how's it going retro. But now we can focus on more of the Kanban properties and see if we can optimize them, figure out how to raise or lower the WIP limits, process things. And now we've taken the retro up a level to maturity level 2, and it's called a flow review. Same meeting to my mind, but now it's called a flow review. And then you take it up a level more to level 3, and it's a service delivery review. And instead of saying, how did your story go and did someone provide it, now we've got somebody way to the left of us, ideally the end customer, saying, well, you guys are doing pretty well, but it still takes us 2 months for suggestions to get through the system. Why does it take 2 months? Or, yeah, you guys are doing pretty well, but we have about 7 bugs every release. Like, why is that? It's really disruptive to us. Or, you put them up, but then no one can see them for 4 days. Why is that? Right? I want customer input in the process. So I've got essentially the same thing, but now I'm way up at the delivery level. And I'm saying, what am I actually delivering to the customer? What do they think about it, and what can I do it? So instead of this intimate team thing, I've now stretched all the way left to the end, ideally, to see if I'm providing something the customer wants. To me, this is just the natural upgrade of a team that's done pretty well at their retros and then their flow reviews, and now they're up a level, and it's a service delivery review, right, of the Kanban cadences. Okay, I left a lot of time for questions, just a little more than I planned, but a lot of times. So who's got the next question? Otherwise, we'll try to take it into more depth here.
Sorry, I was answering a question on the chat. Okay, so who's got any questions about retrospectives? Or if you haven't got any questions, we've been chatting in the chat channel about the great free retros from Chris Stone and the retrospectives that we love. Feel free to kind of like share some of this stuff as well.
Nobody has any favorite retros?
I have a question, mostly on like the actions, right? Because I feel like I don't like to be the one that can like reminds people to kind of like do the actions, but I feel like sometimes you put down an action, like nobody does it, or like you do it for a bit and then like you stop doing the action, or you kind of like fall back into a poor pattern, and it feels quite hard to kind of like enforce. So like, oh, we said we'd do this, but we're not doing it. So like sometimes I think like, when we said we were going to do this, was like even a good idea if we can't like stick to it, or should we just like abandon this idea entirely?
And so when the action is something on a file in a directory somewhere, where was it? I can't remember. It's under projects or whatever, it gets forgotten. So if you specify the output of your retro is either stories in your backlog, or changes to those columns on your board, your policy, it's there. It's a little harder to forget it. You can delay it, but it's more visible. So that's my way of solving that.
I would agree, and we've done this, but even if when it's kind of like visible, like people, because of various reasons, right? Like not just bad intentions, like people won't do it. So like in my mind, I usually kind of like take that as like this is not a good action. If we're not doing it, this is not a good action. So it kind of like it dies a natural death, basically.
Yeah. Not every idea people have is a good one, even if they agreed on it on one Tuesday afternoon. When they look at it again, or when they compare it to the other priorities of things, I think your criticism is or observation is exactly right.
But have you found ways of? I mean, I guess my main issue is like when I notice we're not doing it, like you can kind of maybe say you don't do it once, but we found ways of encouraging other people to also like, I mean, in the best possible way, like police doing the actions, as in like making other people also responsible for saying like, hey, like how about we do this thing we said we'd do?
But I think you're right. I mean, most teams have their own best interest at heart, and if they don't want to do it, you could say, oh, they're just lazy. But that lazy isn't a real agile concept, right? Most people aren't lazy. Most people are trying to do the best they can. And if they look at all those cards on the board and say, this one just isn't that valuable, they're probably right. So I would say, that's the team trying stuff. In this case, they tried an idea, but they didn't follow through because they didn't think it was valuable.
I've got a little extra perspective, Vlad. I guess you can ask the team to kind of like do some value kind of like on these things, but equally, like Tomo says, these options can expire if they're no longer valuable. But if they're not just being done, there's a reason for that, and you have to find it out. So maybe it's about the visibility of that thing. Should that go on your Kanban board? Should you have an improvement Kanban board that you revisit every single time you have one of these retrospectives? Equally, if you're not having enough time, maybe you need to have a policy that says, actually, we're going to allocate 15% of the team's capacity to be able to do these things, to be able to support the continued growth of that. And other ideas you can have are around giving volunteers for owners. Owners doesn't mean that they have to do the work, they have to cajole everybody else to be able to do this. Equally, you can put time in diaries, so where people come together to be able to brainstorm and do some of this thing. So I think you can create lots of opportunity within the environment to be able to encourage people to do these things. If it truly no longer has no value, then drop it, don't do it, hot potato. But to me, it sounds like you've just not got enough time because you're busy, which means for me, that's a different solution. Mike, you've got something?
Yeah, I was going to ask something totally different. So if you want to address that first.
I'll just say quickly that when you have flexible columns on the board, you can have a column for the just for the retro item, and then open it up. You can collapse these, and when you're doing your planning or when the backlog is down a little bit, you can say, let's open up these and pull one of them out, or you can color them specially or give them certain priorities or work item types.
Yeah, I quite like that. Thank you both.
Mike?
Yeah, so I was thinking about the Kanban maturity model levels 1 through 3 that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly if I had my teaching hat on, I'd probably go in that order. Sounds infinitely reasonable. But there's a problem that I see with that as well, because I don't see them as being mutually exclusive. And so it's not that you get to 3 and suddenly you stop doing 1. I think that identifying which are appropriate or having some degree of variability so that you look at, should we look at retrospectives from an outcomes point of view, or from an organizational impact point of view, or from a team point of view, or even from an individual point of view. I think we need to be careful when we talk about levels, because it may imply to certain people that once you've reached level 3, you're no longer doing level 1. So there's just a bit of a warning bell that went off in my head.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And I go back to rotate retrospective formats. You may, even though you have the customer in on 1 week, the next week you may say, we're just going to look at the flow metrics this week, or we're just going to talk about the things that really bug us or whatever. So certainly rotate round. But in general, I found that there are levels in that the team that learns to do that level 1 well tends to clean up most of those problems. And if the more problems of that general ilk arise, they'll address them. And that the levels kind of do with an expanding view of the world, which includes everything inside.
And I think, I agree with you with the expanding view of the world, which is kind of why I said, if I had my teaching hat on, I'd certainly start insular from a team responsibility. And then I'd say, well, where are the blockers for us, and move out to the DevOps arena or the incoming requirements. How do these things affect us, and how can we optimize that? And then you move further out into the organization. But as I said, my worry is, does somebody at the level 3 no longer need to worry about level 1 problems? Hopefully they have the maturity to realize that they incrementally build up on one another. But I think it needs to be explained, even just as a cautionary tale.
Yeah, that makes sense. They never go away, but the focus shifts a little bit.
Any more questions at all?
So usually I get a lot of pushback on the number of columns. Somebody give me some feedback. Too many columns? Too little columns? I can't find any reference to it anywhere, so I've been winging this one. Anybody see it differently? Is that the right number of columns? About as many as fit on the screen?
What does your team say?
The teams I have right now, it's different. Teams that do it differently, but right now, I like the broader view, and the team pretty clearly said this is distracting. So I just did multiple boards. I've got a big board that shows the whole view, and we look at it sometimes. But when they're doing refinement, they look at the littler board on the left, and when they're doing stand-ups, they look at the board on the middle, and the SQA and DevOps people have a board that basically what they look at for the final steps, and that seemed to solve it.
And what do your metrics say? So if you introduce a complex board, does it improve the outcomes? And if you have multiple boards and they've got to swap between that, does that improve or deteriorate outcomes? So that's a good way maybe of trying to see whether one is appropriate. Sorry, just one more thing. It possibly needs to change even with the same team from time to time, depending on the complexity of the work that they're dealing with, because they may want to focus on something rather than having a broad view. Whereas if they're doing a large piece of work and they want to have continuous visibility of this bigger thing and where they sit, then maybe a broader board is better. So I think it's contextual.
And contextual to me focuses often on the kinds of meetings. They have stand-ups to coordinate the in-progress work, and then they break from that and take on a different focus to refine some more stories. And that different focus has its own different board. So I've got specialized boards for the kinds of work you do. And the meetings tend to be focused on one kind of work. So it seems to, the multiple board thing seems to fit. And then if you're on a multi-level board, flight levels or something of that nature, I've got a coordination team, on their Epic board, and I've got 5 development teams on their storyboards. So I've got another board there. But then for the PM, I've got a release board that has all the epics lined up by release. And so I've got, a lot of different boards to focus on different issues for different people, all with the same data underneath. So, maybe the board is the wrong way of looking at it. It's how many boards do you need to solve all the problems?
I agree. It's who's consuming it and what value do they get. I'll tell you a story as well. So I had a team once with 3 people in it that were very mature, and they communicated very well throughout the day. So they got rid of daily stand-ups. They even got rid of retrospectives, and they slimmed down their board from having multiple columns to just those 3 columns, right? Haven't started it, it's in progress, or it's done. Because what they found was that it was a distraction, and they communicated so well that actually putting anything additional was just superfluous for them. And so again, I think it's,
you say? Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think it comes down to context and what works and what doesn't.
I often get a lot of controversy on subtasks. My less mature teams tend to want lots of subtasks. So they have stories that are, to my mind, too big with lots of subtasks. And then they need a board that shows subtasks. And then it makes the stories really hard to see, track, prioritize, whatever. And so I try to push them to smaller stories. On this board, I'm sure right now, I put the subtasks in a lower swim lane. So you can scroll down and look at them. But then I kind of coach people, that they're not a critical part of the process. They're a technique you use when you get something a little bit big and you have multiple people you have to coordinate. And otherwise, there's no reason whatsoever that you need to use subtasks. But they're there if you want them. And I have not found any.
One last thought for you. So just something that came to me now. If you've got a potentially smaller team, but especially if they're mob programming, there may be less need for columns then as well. They're all communicating. They all know where they are. Then it's about trying to optimize your time and delivering value. And the administration of it becomes less important.
Yes. You're always trading off how much time it takes just to keep the board in shape with. But I want to raise one more thing that our teams, they get work done and we try to raise the throughput, velocity, whatever you're using, but the PM needs to be able to project when things will be done. And so I have to leave some metric I can give the PM. Otherwise, they ask all the wrong questions and they put random dates out there and we can't meet them. So one of the things for a board for me is to provide the kind of signals I can feed to the PM so that they can provide the rest of the world with reasonable expectations. And so sometimes I have to move more cards on the board than the team needs just to provide a signature so that we can say, well, we move about 3 cards a week, and the thing you want done is about 18 cards, 6 weeks. In ignoring the rest of the company, the PM and people like that, seems to be a bad plan. Bad things happen when you ignore the administrators.
Brianna, you did have your hand up. Have you still got a question, my dear, or are you?
Less of a question. I was just going to provide commentary and give an example. So a sister team to mine really liked Scrum, and they always like to work in a Scrum model and use Scrum practices. But when they would run into a crisis, the entire team would switch the board to Kanban, and all of a sudden, and they liked as few columns as possible, but they recognized in a crisis they had to expand the board for a lot more of what we were saying with context. So like the number of columns really isn't so much of importance. It's really the why are you using the communication of it. And so when they had a crisis, because their best people were pulled off their team to go work on other situations, they had to they had to be in control of how they were communicating amongst themselves. And so then, yeah, like at one point they had like 20 columns, but every column had a meaning to someone or something that they were working on. And when the crisis was over and they could switch back to being in a Scrum mode and go back to only having 3 or 4 columns. So depending on your situations, it'll fluctuate, and it'll fluctuate quite consistently if you've got them. But they were mature. I should also clarify, they were very mature, and they didn't have a lot of novice individuals trying to learn how to function using a board. So.
And do you know what they liked about Scrum? What was the value?
Well, they built they were very much a feature development team, but they had ultra high performing subject matter experts, right? Who were great, and these were the features that made you millions and billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
But these are also the people who are really, really smart at solving when you have operational issues and you've got major outages. Those people can't be making you the money. They got to go stop the bleeding. So that's why they got pulled off, and that's why they stopped being a Scrum team. So Scrum, great for feature development, but when you're dealing with a crisis and your best people aren't there anymore, you're not going to get that level of achievement, and you don't have a subject matter. That's someone else who's made that executed that decision for you. So that's why they would swap it out, because they're not going to be delivering features to any of the capabilities that they had been in at previous times. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. One of the assertions I've always had, and haven't been able to convince a lot of people, is that the great thing about Kanban is when you have a well-defined set of work to do, work's backed up. Kanban's based on the assembly line, and it's really good at crunching things out. And the place where Scrum is really strong is when you have these big nebulous goals that you don't quite know what to do, where to go, and there certainly is not a whole list of things. So just do this, this, and this. You take bites out of it. You say, for some reason sales are down, we don't know why, and it may be that ugly website we have. We're just going to take 2 weeks and we're just going to clean it up. We're just going to pretty it. Like, give me some stories. What are we going to do here? Take 2 weeks and then say, it really wasn't the prettiness of it. It's the performance, isn't it? Okay, we're going to do performance. Scrum is great at that, and I've tried to tell that to teams, and no, we like Scrum better. Well, why? But to me, that's the big division.
Okay, so just a little thing for me, and it's never a Scrum or Kanban, it's the complementariness of both of these different methods. And Kanban can be used for absolutely anything, including that product delivery. There's really, truly no limitations. So it's really just personal preference, and amazing agile teams are going to use a blend of all of the different methods that are out there in the world. So this is why it's good to learn all about these things.